Most people believe money is a fair game. Same rules, same effort, same outcomes. We're taught that if you work hard, stay disciplined, and make responsible choices, the results will eventually show up. And for a long time, that belief feels reasonable. You study, you show up on time, you do what's expected. So when the gap between effort and reward starts to grow, it creates confusion. Because the truth is uncomfortable. The rich are not better at the game most people are playing. They're playing a completely different game. Different rules, different scorecards, different timelines. Most people are playing the income game. They trade time for money. They optimize for stability. They measure progress in paychecks. The goal is simple: work more, earn more. But there's a limit. No matter how skilled or disciplined you are, time is capped. There are only so many hours in a day. And once those hours are sold, the game resets tomorrow. This is why hard work often plateaus, not because effort stops, but because the game itself has a ceiling. The wealthy understand this early. Instead of asking, "How much can I earn?" they ask, "What can I own?" They play the ownership game. Ownership changes everything. When you own assets, systems, or equity, your effort isn't the product, it's the seed. Time is no longer the only input. Growth doesn't reset every morning. Progress stacks. This is why the wealthy don't measure success by hours worked. They measure leverage. How many people does this reach? How many times does this repeat? How long does this continue without me? Different questions lead to different outcomes. Most people are trained to protect income. Save carefully. Avoid risk. Stay consistent. Again, not wrong, but income protection is a defensive strategy. The wealthy focus on upside. They're willing to look inefficient early. They tolerate uncertainty. They accept short-term instability for long-term control, not recklessly, strategically. Another key difference is timelines. Most people expect results quickly. A raise this year, a promotion next year. Relief soon. The wealthy think in decades. They're willing to plant things that won't pay off for years. They build systems slowly, then let time do the work. This patience isn't accidental. It comes from understanding the game they're playing. When you're playing for income, delay feels dangerous. When you're playing for ownership, delay is part of the plan. This is also why advice often feels confusing. People playing different games give advice that sounds contradictory. Play it safe. Take more risk. Work harder. Work smarter. They're not wrong, they're just speaking from different games. The real problem isn't that people aren't trying hard enough. It's that they're trying harder in the wrong game. No amount of effort will win a game you weren't taught the rules for. And the gap keeps growing not because the wealthy work more, but because their progress compounds while others reset. Understanding this doesn't mean quitting your job or chasing shortcuts. It means becoming aware. Aware of what game you're in. Aware of what you're optimizing for. Aware of how your time is being converted. Because once you see the difference, the frustration makes sense. You stop blaming effort, you stop blaming luck, you stop blaming yourself. And you start asking better questions. Not, "Why am I working so hard?" but, "What game am I actually playing?" Because money was never a fair game. It was never the same game. And the moment you understand that is the moment hard work finally starts working with you, not against you. Part 1. Most people play the income game. Most people are playing the same game, even if they don't realize it. It's a simple loop. Earn income, pay bills, save what's left, then repeat it again next month. This is the default financial path. You go to school to qualify for income. You get a job to earn income. You work harder to increase income. And if you're disciplined, you try to spend less than you make. This game rewards certain behaviors: consistency, obedience, and time. If you show up regularly, follow instructions, and stay reliable, the system usually responds by keeping you employed and slowly increasing your pay. And for survival, this works. Income keeps the lights on. Income creates stability. Income reduces stress in the short term. But there's a limit most people don't think about until they hit it. Income has a ceiling. No matter how motivated you are, Your income is constrained by a few things you can't escape. The first is time. There are only so many hours in a day you can trade for money. Once those hours are sold, the earning potential stops. The second is energy. Working longer doesn't always mean producing more value. Fatigue sets in. Focus drops. Performance plateaus. And the third is approval. Most income depends on someone else saying yes. A boss, a client, a company. Raises require permission. Promotions require timing. Opportunities require alignment. This means your income isn't fully under your control, even if your effort is. This is where many people get confused. They assume that if they just work harder, stay disciplined, and avoid mistakes, income will eventually solve everything. But effort doesn't remove ceilings. It only helps you reach them faster. This is why so many people feel stuck despite doing everything right. They're responsible, they're reliable, they're consistent, yet their financial situation changes very slowly. Not because they're lazy, not because they're careless, but because they're playing a game that wasn't designed for wealth. The income game is designed for predictability, not upside. It keeps society functioning. It keeps businesses running. It keeps systems stable. But stability and wealth are not the same thing. Wealth requires something income alone can't provide: scale. When income increases, effort usually has to increase with it. More hours, more responsibility, more pressure. But when wealth grows, effort doesn't always rise at the same rate. Sometimes it stays the same, sometimes it even decreases. This is the first major difference between average financial outcomes and wealthy ones. The rich don't rely on income alone. That doesn't mean they don't earn income. They do. But they don't treat it as the main engine of their financial life. They understand income is useful, but limited. So instead of asking only, "How can I earn more?" they also ask, "How can my effort continue to pay me after the work is done? How can one decision create results multiple times? How can I stop tying every dollar to my time and energy?" These questions don't get asked inside the income game. Because the income game teaches you to optimize effort, not structure. It teaches you to work harder inside the system, not to think beyond it. Most people never leave this game. They spend decades improving their position within it without realizing it has a ceiling they can't cross, no matter how disciplined they are. Understanding this isn't about quitting your job or rejecting income. It's about recognizing what income can and cannot do. Income is a foundation. It is not the finish line. And until you see that clearly, you'll keep playing a game that feels productive, feels responsible, and feels safe, but quietly limits how far you can actually go. That's the first difference. Not how hard people work, but which game they're playing. Part 2. The rich play the ownership game. Most people are taught to focus on income. Get a good job. Work hard. Earn more per hour. And income matters. It pays the bills. It keeps the lights on. It provides stability. But income and wealth are not the same thing. Rich people understand a different rule. Wealth comes from ownership. Ownership of businesses. Ownership of equity. Ownership of assets. Ownership of systems. Ownership changes the rules of the game. When you earn income, you trade time for money. You show up. You work. You get paid. When you stop showing up, the money stops too. That's not a flaw. That's just how income works. Ownership works differently. When you own something valuable, it continues to produce results even when you're not actively working. A business can make money overnight. An asset can increase in value while you sleep. Equity can grow without your daily involvement. This is the core difference most people miss. Income pays bills. Ownership builds wealth. Rich people don't hate jobs. They don't reject earning. They just don't stop there. They use income as a tool to buy ownership. That's why wealthy people think less about salary and more about stakes. They ask different questions. Instead of, "How much does this pay per hour?" they ask, "What do I own at the end of this?" Because ownership compounds. If you own nothing, every year starts from zero. You work, you get paid, you spend, You repeat. But when you own something, progress carries forward. Each year builds on the last. Even small ownership matters. A tiny equity stake, a small business, a digital product, a piece of a system. Ownership doesn't have to be massive to be meaningful. It just has to exist. This is why rich people are patient. They're willing to earn less today if it increases what they own tomorrow. They're willing to delay comfort for control. Because ownership gives leverage, leverage over time, leverage over decisions, leverage over stress. When you own assets, you gain options. You can choose when to work. You can choose what to focus on. You can choose how much risk to take. Without ownership, choices are limited. You work because you have to. You accept terms you didn't design. You live inside someone else's system. Ownership flips that dynamic. It turns effort into accumulation instead of exhaustion. This is why rich people care less about raises and more about equity. A raise improves your lifestyle. Ownership improves your future. One increases comfort, the other increases freedom. This doesn't mean everyone should quit their job tomorrow. It means everyone should understand the game they're in. If all your effort goes into income and none into ownership, wealth remains out of reach. Not because you're lazy, not because you're unlucky, but because you're playing by rules that don't compound. The rich don't win because they work harder. They win because they own. They build things that continue working after the effort ends. And once you understand that difference, everything changes. You stop asking, how do I earn more? And start asking, what can I own? That question is the beginning of wealth. Part 3. Time is used differently. Most people don't control their time. They react to it. They wake up and respond. Emails, messages, tasks, deadlines. The day pulls them forward before they decide where it should go. By the time evening comes, they feel busy, but not closer to anything meaningful. Reactive time feels productive. You're answering things, fixing things, handling problems. But reaction is not direction. It's movement without control. Most people plan their time in days and weeks. What do I need to finish today? What do I need to get through this week? That mindset keeps life manageable, but small. The wealthy use time differently. They don't spend most of it reacting, they spend it positioning. Positioning means asking longer questions. Where will this lead in 5 years? If this works, what does it unlock? If it fails, what do I learn? They think in years, not weeks, because short-term thinking fills time. Long-term thinking shapes it. Rich people make fewer decisions, but bigger ones. They don't constantly adjust. They choose a direction, then let time work inside that direction. Most people make hundreds of small decisions every day. What to respond to, what to fix, what to handle next. That drains energy. The wealthy protect energy by reducing unnecessary decisions. They say no more often. They simplify. They design systems instead of managing chaos. Not because they're smarter, but because they respect time more. Time isn't something to fill, it's something to invest. When you fill time, the goal is relief. Get through the day, get through the week, get through the pressure. When you invest time, the goal is return. What will this hour produce later? What does this decision compound into? Most people are busy maintaining their current life. The wealthy spend time building the next one. That's why they often look calm. Not because life is easy, but because their time isn't constantly under attack. They've positioned themselves so fewer things demand immediate attention. Reactive living feels urgent. Positioned living feels slow. But slow compounds. Urgent exhausts. This is the shift most people never make. They believe time management is about efficiency. It's not. It's about intention. You don't need to do more with your time. You need to decide what your time is for. If your time is always reacting, you stay average no matter how hard you work. If your time is invested toward positioning, results arrive quietly, then suddenly. The difference between average and wealthy is rarely effort. It's where time is placed. Time isn't filled. Time is invested, and that single shift changes everything. Part 4. Risk is calculated, not avoided. Most people are taught one rule about money. Avoid risk. Play it safe. Don't gamble. Don't lose what you already have. On the surface, that advice sounds responsible. And in many areas of life, it is. But when it comes to building wealth, that mindset creates a quiet ceiling. Because avoiding all risk doesn't protect your future. It limits it. Average thinking treats risk like danger, something to stay away from, something reckless people do, something smart people avoid. So the goal becomes certainty, a stable job, a predictable income, a clear path with no surprises, and certainty feels good. You know what's coming next month. You know what your life will roughly look like next year. You can plan around it. But certainty has a hidden cost. It caps your upside. Rich thinking doesn't avoid risk. It prices it. Instead of asking, "Is this risky?" they ask different questions. What's the downside? What happens if this fails? Can I survive the loss? They don't assume success, but they also don't assume disaster. They measure. They calculate. They understand that risk isn't one thing. There's reckless risk, where you don't understand what you're stepping into. And there's calculated risk, where the downside is known, contained, and acceptable. Most people never learn the difference, so they treat all risk the same. And when everything feels dangerous, the safest option becomes doing nothing. Staying put, staying comfortable, staying average. Rich thinking goes one layer deeper. They ask, is the upside asymmetric? In simple terms, that means, if this works, could the reward be much larger than the loss? Could a small risk create a large opportunity? Because when the downside is limited and the upside is meaningful, the risk becomes rational, not emotional, not impulsive, strategic. This is why wealthy people don't need certainty. They don't wait until success is guaranteed. They wait until the odds make sense. They know most things won't work perfectly. Some will fail, some will stall, some will disappoint. That's expected. Failure isn't the threat. Irrecoverable loss is. So they protect against collapse, not against discomfort. They don't risk what they can't afford to lose. They don't bet the entire future on one move. They don't confuse confidence with recklessness, but they also don't freeze. Because freezing feels safe, but it slowly guarantees average outcomes. Think about it honestly. Avoiding risk feels calm today. But what does it cost over 10 years? Missed skills, missed opportunities, missed leverage. While you were waiting for certainty, someone else was learning, testing, adjusting. They didn't win every time, but they moved forward. Average thinking waits for permission. Rich thinking accepts uncertainty, as long as the math makes sense. This is where people get confused. They think wealthy people are fearless. They're not. They're cautious, just in a different way. They fear stagnation more than failure. They understand that inflation, competition, and time are risks too. Invisible ones. And avoiding visible risk often exposes you to invisible risk instead. The risk of staying replaceable. The risk of depending on one income stream. The risk of having no options when circumstances change. Those risks don't feel dramatic. They feel normal, until one day they're not. Calculated risk looks boring from the outside. It's small moves, side projects, learning new skills, testing ideas quietly. No big announcements, no dramatic leaps, just measured exposure to upside. And the willingness to look wrong for a while. That's another difference. Average thinking wants to feel right immediately. Rich thinking is willing to look uncertain in exchange for long-term advantage. They don't chase excitement, they chase probability. They don't need guarantees, they need survivability. If they lose, they recover. If they win, it compounds. That's the game. Avoiding all risk might protect your comfort, but it locks in your position. You stay where you are, with the same limits, the same ceilings, the same trade of time for money. And over time, that safety becomes fragile. Because the world changes, industries shift, skills expire. The biggest risk isn't trying and failing. It's never trying. And waking up years later with no leverage. Risk, when understood, isn't something to fear. It's something to manage. Price the downside, protect your base, expose yourself to upside. That's how progress actually happens, not through boldness, not through recklessness, but through calculated moves made consistently over time. Avoiding risk feels safe, but it quietly guarantees that nothing extraordinary will happen. And for most people, that's the real cost. So if this helped you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear this. Stay focused, stay consistent, and keep building a future you'll be proud to look back on. Your journey continues from here.